Hello everyone, and welcome to another RPI Consultants webinar Wednesdays. Today we're going to be discussing some frequently requested brainware enhancements. These are things that our clients often ask us for and that we implement, and we wanted to share them so you could get some ideas as to what might be useful for your environment. Few items real quick. Of course, the slide deck will be available to all attendees, as well as a recording of this presentation will be available on YouTube. Of course, as always, please submit any questions you have through the GoToWebinar questions pane inside of the GoToWebinar client. And of course, as always, if you have any ideas for presentations that you would like to see, any topics, software solutions that you would like some more information on, we are happy to put that together, so please just let us know. Our agenda for today. We'll give you a quick introduction, and then we will jump into some enhancements that apply to pretty much anyone who has Brainware installed. They are not generally solution specific. Then we'll talk a little bit about visibility reporting and how you can use that. The second half of the webinar will be around enhancements that are for specific use cases, generally for Distiller for invoices or for invoice processing, but not necessarily. Then we'll wrap up with some questions. I am John Marney, for those who don't know me. I am the manager for solution delivery on the imaging team. I have extensive experience in designing and implementing various software products and solutions, from Kofax to Perceptive to OnBase. Most of my experience does lie in the accounts payable space for healthcare organizations and manufacturing organizations, though I have done a huge variety of various projects, and I'm a proud K-State alumni.
Hello, my name is Michael Madsen. I'm a senior consultant. Generally work with designing and implementing Highland products. A lot of the areas that I work in are going to be around manufacturing, also accounts payable and higher education. Luckily I am the office dungeon master, so get those D20s warm.
All right, so a little bit about RPI. We are 80 plus full-time consultants, project managers, developers. We have offices in Baltimore, Tampa, and right here in Kansas City, where our team is based. We run the gamut of professional services. So whether it's a new implementation or a redesign, an upgrade, or managed services, we can support you. We are partners with a number of different organizations and work with a variety of products. Infor, who makes Lawson, is one of our big ones. We're also partners with Kofax and, of course, Highland. Highland are the owners of Brainware, if not the creators, and also OnBase, and we are partners with them, supporting, again, implementations, upgrades, and a variety of other services. So we have a lot of experience with the Brainware platform. And
so today we're going to talk about some general enhancements for Capture. These are a lot of questions that people have come up to us about, some of the solutions that we've designed around them. We're assuming that a lot of people who have joined already have a basic understanding of Capture, so we're just going to jump right into the enhancements.
Oh, that's too many slides.
So our first one we're going to go over is large documents. So a lot of businesses will pull in invoices or other document types for other business processes that have multiple pages. Problem with these is that they can take a long time to process inside of Capture. They consume a lot of your licensed page count, and then in the end they end up having poor OCR results, and the extraction generally fails anyway. So you're generally having your verifiers touch all of them regardless.
And so to solve that, you can do one or all of these things. One of the first things you could set up is to create a separate RTS instance. Those are the server-side processes that chew through your documents and perform OCR and extraction. So you can actually set up one specifically for handling only large documents, so that the smaller documents or normal-sized documents can continue to process through the normal server-side processes. This is important because if you accidentally even submit a 200-page document, which may not even be on purpose. It could have meant to be split into smaller documents. But if you do that, it's going to the server-side processes are going to hang up on that large document and not let anything else through. So creating a separate avenue for the large documents to process can help with throughput. On top of that, you could set that new RTS instance up to only OCR the first and last page, or first 2 pages and last page, to save on that page count in your licenses. It also allows you to maybe only capture header data on that document to still help with the manual entry, but allow the users to manually enter the detail information, which can actually be beneficial for those larger documents. And we have a quick screenshot of that RTS instance. It's a little small, but if you look closely, you can see that there's an option to configure only OCRing certain first and last pages of a document.
Yeah, and it's important to remember that you're not specifically barred to the first 2 and last 1. It can be whatever you set up inside of those properties.
Generally, we would set this up to be anything larger than, say, 5 or 10 page documents. All right, what's our next problem?
So, additional validation rules. The out-of-the-box solution allows users to enter invalid information. So what we mean by this is, like, if you have a date field or something like that, when you pass that information along into your workflow process, that date may be formatted in a way that can't be read by something else. So now it has to go to an exception queue where somebody goes in and manually fixes that.
So the solution to this is a variety of different things, and this may be a variety of different problems. In the example of date formatting, we can force users to enter dates in a certain way, or if they enter it incorrectly, the form won't validate. You also have options around conditional formatting and conditional fields, such as if one field, or if your date occurs in the future, let's say it's an invoice date or a transcript date, we can cause it to throw an error and require a selection on another field confirming, yes, this is in the future. And of course, custom fields can be added to drive further downstream logic. So if there's anything not being extracted or not being validated, that can always be added.
Query performance is a common problem. A lot of the time, if you have certain documents that are always running the same queries or lookups, if that lookup takes a long time, your throughput will be greatly increased in regards to how many batches you're processing in a certain period of time. So there's a lot of different things that we can do to enhance the query performance and your throughput.
Right, so this can be both a server-side problem in how long documents take to process. It can also be a client-side problem in what the users actually experience and latency there. And the solution may not necessarily even be Brainware specific. We may not have to make changes to Brainware. We can actually help you analyze the performance of those queries on the target database and see how we could rewrite that query to improve performance. We could also, so we can take those queries and implement them either on the view on the database that you're using. We can change it to the call to use a stored procedure instead, which doesn't necessarily increase performance, but it could allow for more options on how we're filtering data and calling it, which can actually net in a performance increase.
So duplicates are generally handled in your ECM post-capture, but this is a problem because we're wasting time in the verifier process and the OCR extraction process. So if we can figure out how to identify those duplicates in the beginning, then we don't have to worry about spending the extra time to work later on.
Right, and this is not, it's commonly believed that this should be something that is configured out of the box, but it actually is a commonly requested thing that we need to build as an enhancement. So we can actually implement a duplicate check in Brainware, and it could be checking against your ERP, your student information system, against your ECM, against your workflow, against any other system where we can check. And present an error to the user saying this may be a duplicate to allow them to use an invalid reason to not have to verify that data or even void the document so that they can just remove it from their processing altogether.
So the next item is split batches by user. Based on your business process, not every user needs to look at, or every verifier needs to look at every batch in verifier. There may be specific vendors that they work with or something like that if you're in an accounts payable department. And it wastes a lot of time having the users trying to identify the specific batches that they need to work on. Well, we can adjust that by pulling information in through the extraction process.
So the solution here is really allow users to work on only the documents they need to work on. If we're feeding information into Brainware, such as what user actually captured a document or batch, we can actually split the batches so that only those users can see them. Therefore, they would end up only having to verify the stuff that they need to. And that would allow users to more easily see and search through their own batches.
So Brainware comes with a certain set of custom or invalid reason codes out of the box. These are going to be things that you can utilize to try to force a batch through so that you can get it extracted and into the rest of your process. However, the ones that come out of the box aren't always what you're looking for or don't always meet your needs. So just remember that we can create new ones.
Absolutely. So custom codes can be implemented on top of what you have right now, and they can be for any business rule. They can also contain new logic. So what I mean by that is each invalid reason code specifies which fields no longer need to be required or validated. We can add logic on top of what exists already to require or not require a field.
So a big issue that people have with Brainware is they don't even know where to locate their problem areas. So you may have documents that read in that have a specific field that it fails on every single time for this specific vendor. And how are you supposed to find that? Well, you can find that information through visibility reporting.
So yeah, visibility reporting can provide a ton of different metrics. Most owners of Brainware actually already own visibility. It's generally a package sale, and you may not even know it. There are many out-of-the-box reports in the system that can help inform where inefficiencies exist. So whether we're talking about how many documents individual verifier users are verifying on a given day, week, or year, whether you want field-by-field information to identify specific input methods, capture methods, specific vendors or whatnot that are inefficient. Those reports generally already exist, so you don't really need the custom reporting. We actually have a previous webinar we did about a year ago on visibility reporting specifically. So you can get that on our website, and in that you can get some help identifying whether you already own it. And if you don't know, please feel free to contact us. Quick screenshot of just a sample report. This one is showing extraction rates and document volume over the last 30 days. So you'll see in the screenshot, in this instance, this client had processed 90,000 documents in the last 30 days, and we're getting, and 16% of them required a verifier interaction. Okay, so jumping into some more solution-specific enhancements. These are really mostly around invoice processing, where we see most of our Brainware users. However, they may yet apply to other use cases. So the first problem, somewhat related to what we've already talked about, is that there are extra fields required based on your business system that aren't out of the box and sometimes aren't easily configured using the GUI tools. So this could be something like a PO type that goes along with your PO number that you maybe at least need users to see even if it's not extracted. It also could be something like a vendor subtype. So do you want it classified as a service vendor or a utility vendor?
Yep, so we can take distiller and configure some of those custom fields, and then we can also extract specific values based on custom queries or connections to the ERP. So like John said, a good example is PO type. So if I have a service handling code on a PO, I know to send that service handling code with the document when we export it instead of requiring your ECM or other workflow process to pick it up later.
Alongside of that, we also have frequent requests for per vendor enhancements. So a lot of times this is driven by those visibility reports we'd mentioned, where we can identify one vendor specifically has a certain field failing, and that always requires manual intervention. So a good example of this is if you have an invoice number on a document that has the letters INV and then the numbers 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, perhaps that invoice, the way it's printed, that 0 always reads as a capital O.
And some things that we can help with this is obviously if you have problem invoices for a vendor, you've got a collection of those. You can actually create learn sets, read those in, try to increase your OCR extraction rates. But we can also implement custom code. So if we have a vendor where, to use John's example, and they have an invoice number that it starts with INV and it will always have a number after that, we can input custom code that knows to never accept a letter and to only accept a number. So, or to always set it, if it sees an O, to set it as a 0.
And a quick screenshot just of what invalid fields look like. Here we have an example of an invoice number using a 1 instead of an I, which is also a very common failure. So as Mike had mentioned, we can add custom code to only accept certain types of characters or certain characters specifically. Another one that we're seeing more and more often is that where a US-based company may have implemented Brainware to process primarily for their US business units, they do want to expand to business units or clients that are overseas. In this case, in the EMEA region or largely Europe. Of course, Europe has their own tax requirements. So that would include things like a value-added tax ID that is extracted off of the invoice for each vendor. It can also be tax codes and special tax rates that apply at the detail level.
And using custom configuration, we can either extract it from the document if it exists on the document, or utilize like a vendor ID or a business unit to determine what those codes are. And then we can take it even a step further and apply that to certain calculations if we need to do that inside of Brainware.
And you'll see in this screenshot up on the top right, we have a VAT ID that was either extracted off of the document or pulled in from the ERP. Related to the last one, not quite as complex as EMEA taxes. You also have Canadian taxes, and this would generally apply to US-based companies that are wanting to work with Canadian vendors even. So you don't have the complexity of the VAT generally, but you do have a couple special tax calculations that need to happen.
Yep, and this just kind of ties back into the last slide where we can implement some kind of custom configuration to search for those codes and apply that calculation to the output.
All right, so that is the high level. There are a ton of different things that you can do with Brainware. However, we weren't, of course, able to touch on all of them. We are open to take any questions that there are right now. While we see if there's any questions, we do have some other resources. So the RPI knowledge base is on our website, rpic.com. We also have a number of older webinars, like I'd mentioned, that visibility webinar. If you're interested in that, that is on our website as well.
Hey guys, we have one question here, and it is, how many learn sets can you have without system performance issues?
That's a great question. So the rule of thumb, if I recall correctly, was, when we started doing these implementations, we would say no more than 20 or something like that. It really is going to vary a lot, and it's partly going to vary depending on your hardware. It's going to vary depending on the complexity of those learn sets. We have clients who have a lot more than that. We also have clients who don't use learn sets because of the potential performance impact. And what we do in that case is we will use custom code instead, because that is more use case specific and doesn't rely on the template matching, which can impact the entire throughput negatively that learn sets have the potential for.
Right, and with that custom code, we can kind of identify things that are on the invoice without looking at the template, just looking at certain items on the invoice to then, within the code, know specifically what kind of invoice it should be and apply those custom configurations there.
Next question, I think I know the answer. We have someone asking if we have any additional information on creating learn sets. I don't believe we have. Do we have a white paper on that yet?
I don't think we have anything prepared. I believe there's a decent amount of documentation available on the Highland portal. The Brainware documentation is very thorough, to the point of being probably too much for the average user to really dig through. But there is information on there about how to set up a learn set. We also do provide training on that if that's something you want to take on. All right, sounds like that's it. Of course, if you have any more questions, feel free to shoot them to us in an email. And thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.